to our first session. We're incredibly excited to have Arka Dhar with us today. Arka is a serial AI entrepreneur. He's been one of the early employees at OpenAI in charge of data for training models, which is called human data. Arka studied computer science at MIT and business at London Business School. So Arka, it's an honor to welcome you on Platform Leaders.
Thank you very much, Laure. Very excited to be here and great to look at the poll results. I think the one person who said they never used it, they're probably trying to figure out if the poll is real.
Exactly, exactly. But we'll get them to use these tools very soon, I'm sure. So, would you like to start by talking about your experience working at OpenAI?
Absolutely. So I was a member of the product team and I was the head of human data at OpenAI. So our group was responsible for ensuring that the models follow instructions, ensuring that the models are fine-tuned, and also like evaluating the models to really understand the behavior and if it's matching up with what is the expected behavior of a GenAI model. Experience working at OpenAI. I am I think it's not even been weeks since I have just recently been former OpenAI. So it very much feels like I was just there. It's an absolutely incredible place. I'm amazed at the concentration of human brain power at that company and the team that the company has put together, and also the culture at the organization, which really encourages rapid experimentation, pushing the scientific boundaries, and then trying to bring something to the world that has not been done before. So an incredibly exciting place to be at, working on GenAI.
Excellent. So now, one of the questions that several people have asked is, as we can see, everyone uses GenAI today, but more and more in organizations as well. And the question is, how should companies deploy GenAI tools at scale? And what's been your experience? And are there any bottlenecks to that companies face in scaling these new technologies?
Sure, I think everyone does, and we should be very honest, right? Like the ChatGPT and the whole GenAI thing, we launched in November 22. So this is a very, very new technology, and I think rightfully a lot of us, a lot of enterprises have spent quite a bit of time and energy trying to understand the technology. Albeit maybe it's generating poems or helping you write emails. Maybe the use cases are pretty foundational at the beginning, and we are starting to see them getting way more complicated and really taking up critical work streams and workflows at the company. I always caution with this idea of deploying at scale. This is a new technology, and we are still learning its capabilities and how it can be integrated into our businesses. And with all the excitement and with the idea that we are one day going to get to AGI, a lot of the conversation is about replacement. It's about replacement of work. And I think that does a disservice to how successfully we can deploy these technologies. I would say the most important thing is, pick a work stream that you want to see highly optimized, where you want to improve the quality of work, where you want to improve throughput, or bring in a perspective which was difficult to bring in, just having business as usual. It can be a work stream in marketing, or it can be a work stream in finance, it can be market research. So instead of trying to do this massive business impact and running a major transformation project across the company, I always urge our customers and folks that I meet to pick a workflow, pick a group of users, and can we superpower them? Can we give them this incredible superpower to vastly improve the throughput and quality of work? And kind of do it in that kind of a piecemeal way, a little bit, while we are understanding this technology and better integrating it.
Okay, so I mean, you've worked with customers all over the world, from the US to Japan. What interesting and surprising use cases have you seen recently?
I am frankly blown away by the use cases quite frequently. Without picking on a very specific use case, I would like to kind of maybe outline what I think are some of the incredible aspects of this technology. We humans, we can be myopic at times, right? Faced with a question or a situation, we can get very focused on an outcome or an answer, and then it becomes very difficult for us to kind of explore the alternatives or explore kind of like intersections which don't naturally come to our mind. Those are kind of like at a very high level an area where the model absolutely excels at. So if you ask and if you prompt the model to say, hey, I have all these different variables, and this is X is what I'm solving for, but I want to understand Y, Z, A, B, C that I'm not thinking about. Can you help me create all these different scenarios or situations? And based on the data, crunching all this analysis of insights that you have access to, can you give me things that I have missed in the past? And that's where you see a lot of proliferation of very, very exciting use cases. And if you look at the foundation, at the fundamentals of research, it's a process of elimination, right? So you are basically exploring concepts and insights, and you're trying to say, I'm going to go down this path because these other paths have led me to a certain no. And we very often just pick one path. So I think being non-myopic is a really great thing that the model brings to the table, outside of just the ease at which you can do massive amounts of computation, data analysis, and all of that. But one use case, Laure, that is pretty close to my heart is the model GenAI is amazing at breaking down context. So if you pick an industry, let's say like agriculture, and in certain countries, especially the developing world, a farmer might not have the tooling or the level of mental conditioning to understand very, very complex soil reports or weather reports. They might not be able to use it to actually improve the yield of their agricultural ground. And I have seen applications of this technology where that kind of complex insight can be broken down in a language they understand, at a level they understand, with a list of actions they can take to further execute upon it. So it's hard for me to pick very specific use cases, but non-myopic and this one around agriculture comes to mind.
Excellent, excellent. So today, the way we interface with large language models is through prompting, right? And to do a task. Soon, agents will be able to achieve very complex goals and all the underlying tasks on their own, right? Without any supervision. So an agent, for example, could potentially have access to your bank accounts and manage and optimize your finances. How do you see agents working with people in the future?
You've touched on something I'm truly excited about. I do believe agentic systems is the future. We are going to have, let's call it a Laure GPT or maybe an Arka GPT, which is a true representation of my values and my integrity and what I care about. And it's a digital twin of mine that is way more adept at doing complex tasks, and it makes my life a whole lot easier. And at some point, it's going to become completely stateful, and it can kind of operate in the background. Now, you said a very, very important word, which is unsupervised. And I think that's the big question, is at what point do we let an agentic system be completely unsupervised? And to what extent do we have human in the loop? And the way I like to answer it is, at what point will I feel comfortable letting my agentic system make a life or death decision for me? And for me, we are not close to that yet. So I think this will be supervised agentic systems, but they will become a digital twin doing vast majority of our tasks that we have to do today that take up our time in our personal life. You can apply the same in the work life as well. Big believer of agentic system.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's obviously a cost to building these systems, and it's the compute cost, right, which is really increasing exponentially. I mean, we've seen it not just with Sora, which is OpenAI's video production model, but also with all the other video models. This is going to be intensive kind of energy-wise going forward. So how do you think that we can make this more sustainable?
I'm an optimist. And what I mean by that is, like historically, when one thing that I always ask people is when you first looked at the Wright brothers plane, like no one could have imagined that we are going to be on something similar crossing continents at that time, right? Like you just don't make those connections yet. And things get more and more efficient and effective. And the same happened with computing. I mean, you look at mainframe computers versus what we have on our cell phones today, they're vastly different. There is a huge focus in the Gen AI, in the large language model research community to become a lot more compute efficient, to have these algorithms maybe even one day operate on edge on local devices without having the need of a massive number of GPUs. I do not have a good sense of how quickly are we going to get there, but it's a real concern that a lot of people are working on. Of course, the other one is just a massive cost of compute and the massive cost of energy and what it means to the world. I saw somewhere that some large tech companies have seen massive increase in emissions. We have seen just proliferation of data centers. Some of them might not be all that climate ethical, to say. So there are areas of concern there, and going back to the fundamentals, I would say data, compute, and algorithmic improvements, and kind of like all three of those main pillars will one day get us to a place where this technology can actually become quite prevalent and quite easily accessible.
So the stated objective of OpenAI is to develop AGI, right? So you've spent 3 years focusing on this. Where do you think we're at on this journey, and what can we expect going forward?
Yeah, I think the foundation of the company was to work on AGI. So way more than that, and I think some of the researchers at OpenAI have been thinking about AGI and superintelligence for an incredibly long time. And that does remain the focus. When I say this, I'm not speaking for OpenAI, more of a personal opinion. Extremely excited about what it means to get to AGI. What kind of use cases and applications open up? What does it do to humanity? What are the safety repercussions when you have a system, an agentic system that we created that is outsmarting us in basically every knowledge index that exists today. Again, I'm an optimist, and I actually do believe that in the very near future we will get to a point where we get to see systems which are very AGI-like. There is a lot of debate in the community of what is AGI and what constitutes AGI, what can be called AGI. One of the definitions that I really like is where the system can start replacing a lot of economic activity, right? So you see labor share of income kind of shift towards the capital share of income contribution to the GDP. So AGI can be very exciting. It does have safety repercussions, so we have to be very, very focused on those aspects of the technology.
Excellent. So there's questions from the audience, which I think are going to the host and panelists only. But there's one: what are the risks of increasing the inequalities with people having access to LLMs and those who don't have access?
Yeah, I believe the question is from Jeremy, right?
Okay.
It's a brilliant question. I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the Cobb-Douglas function of GDP growth. It's like an equation which gives you a sense of what are the primary contributors of GDP, and it's a multiplication of TFP, total factorial productivity, and then the two components which are contributing to GDP is capital and labor. And I'm going a bit theoretical here, but I have a point. The point is, when you look at the Cobb-Douglas function and you look at the coefficients as tasks which are getting more and more automated, what we very quickly realize is as we go down this path of extreme automation, labor share of income goes down, capital share of capital contribution to GDP increases, labor contribution to GDP goes down. What does it mean? Capital is way more efficient at generating more capital. Labor hours have an intrinsic limit to what we can do. That's why I talk about really supercharging labor. Like, can we have a focus of using this technology to vastly improve what labor is able to accomplish in the limited time that we do have when we work? Now, to Jeremy's question, I think the consequences of access to these technologies and not having access to these technologies can be devastating. I think if it becomes a tool of the rich, if it becomes a tool which is very limited access to a very specific group of individuals or companies, and the benefits are not distributed, I think that's one of the worst outcomes of these technologies. We will see a massive divergence in the Gini index. We will see just the gap between haves and have-nots is going to be significant. It's as if you are taking away people's hands and legs and asking them to compete, right? So, yeah, Jeremy, good question. I would wish everyone focuses and works on distributing benefits of this technology as widely as possible. Otherwise, it can be pretty devastating to us.
Yeah. There's another question as well. I don't know if you see it, Arka, in the feed to host and panelists from Iman about the current data privacy options from OpenAI. Can you perhaps answer quickly to this one?
Because I'm not working at OpenAI right now, I do not want to answer questions on OpenAI's data privacy policy or anything. What I can say is from my time there, I know how seriously everyone at that company takes it and how much effort is put into both security and just remaining in compliance. And if something is wrong, everyone goes after it and fixes it. But, will these models learn more from an individual user versus will the model need access to Nobel laureates to learn new technologies? Like, is it going to learn more from me versus someone way smarter than me if the models are already reaching a level of reasoning and cognitive abilities which are significantly higher than median population? That gives me hope that we don't have to be data farmed to improve. There are synthetic abilities now to also improve the model's performance. So I'm hopeful that we'll never have to get into any kind of weird situations here. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I don't know if there's any more questions from the attendees, but I've got one for you. I mean, you've just left OpenAI to focus on your new ventures. Do you want perhaps to say a few words about what you're going to build next?
I think I was like my time at OpenAI, I was profoundly moved by both the research groups there, the product teams there, and just kind of the something incredible has happened in this industry, right? For the longest time, all researchers, product individuals, we are working on narrow AI. So at my own company at Zinnier, we're working on, let's say, schedule optimization. And that was kind of the focus of us, right? And there has been a great centering. Now what you have is a whole lot of researchers are single-mindedly focusing on GenAI and LLMs. I truly mean it. Like the concentration of brain power across the world. Look at us. We are all here talking about GenAI. We're not talking about pure machine learning for schedule optimization. We are talking about a general technology that we believe is the ultimate representation of AI advancements, right? So that is going to have a massive scaling effect. I think we are going to see improvements in this technology a whole lot faster. AI is not new, but we are seeing a massive acceleration of what can be done with AI. So I'm a strong believer. It's here to stay. It's a pretty permanent change to how we live our lives. And what I want to do is actually focus on the foundations, and that's compute and data. So what I want to understand is a bit connected to that original question of distributed benefits, is if this evolution happens in the world that we're living in, and AI and GenAI and LLMs are becoming kind of omnipresent around us, they have to run on data centers, and they will need some sort of data to learn from and forever and remain current. And I'm focused on a couple of enterprises in those two verticals, without getting into more details.
Okay, we're going to watch this space. Now, there's I think there's a related question, which is about market mechanisms. What market mechanisms will ensure equitable access to GenAI capabilities? I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do not know how to. I think a lot of us are thinking about it, and at least I don't have a good answer. Look, like one thing that I was a fan of, and I'm still a fan of, is the profit cap of that we have at OpenAI. It forces us to keep reducing price of our products. So I think like if we can just purely remain focused on not just revenue, but reducing costs to making it as accessible as possible. OpenAI has had a good track record of continuously reducing cost of access to our technologies. So I think we can do that. If we can make big algorithmic upgrades to these technologies so that they can be a lot more compute efficient, that will help. If we can find better data center technologies so that, cost of cooling, cost of operating, all of those things are fairly controlled. There are a lot of innovations happening there. I think all of those things help. Any kind of regulations that make it a game of the large companies and makes it very difficult for younger companies to come in, I think will be devastating. So I think, I know we're going to have a conversation about regulations. I have a lot of thoughts there later on today. But regulations are important for safety, but at the same time, what we need to ensure is that it doesn't become a oligopoly or absolutely not a monopoly, but not an oligopoly, and that it just protects the larger enterprises. I do think that regulations should hold OpenAI and a young startup in AI to very different bars, or very different regulatory requirements, if not bars. Bars is probably not the right word. So I would say those things. Things just have to get way more efficient around data and compute, and regulations have to get a lot smarter so that there is continuous competition and new entrants, and the status quo gets always challenged.
Excellent. Thank you. We're at the end of our time, but thank you so much, Arka. It's always fascinating to talk to you. There's a few more questions, but unfortunately we can't take them all. So apologies to the really interesting questions that were asked through the chat to the hosts and panelists.
Of course. Laure, thank you very much for having me. And great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arka.